Well, Crystal Palace had announced Patrick Vieira. Everyone knows Patrick Vieira. He won the World Cup and the European Championships with France as their new manager. What's significant about this is that this could be a start of many more black managers coaching at the elite level. Joining me to discuss this, I'd like to welcome EWN sports anchor THOLAKELE Mnganga. THOLAKELE, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us.
Afternoon, Faraz. It's nice to see you again.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you, THOLAKELE. And I think, THOLAKELE, you and I on various different media platforms, we've spoken about the need for black managers. Is this the start? Do you believe this could be the start of something huge?
I think it is the start of something huge, but unfortunately, unlike his white counterparts, Patrick Vieira doesn't have the luxury of failing, because if he fails at maybe saving Crystal Palace from relegation, or maybe finishing in the top half of the table, a lot of the clubs are going to go, while the likes of Chris Hughton, yes, they may do well in the championship, but we don't think they'll do well in the top flight of the English Premier League. And also, who else is coming through the system? I remember, I think last year when John Obi Mikel and the likes of Bakary Sagna were speaking about how white managers can walk into positions because they've got the likes of Uncle Harry Redknapp for Frank Lampard, or they've got recommendations of their friends that can say, you know what, I really believe in Steven Gerrard. Maybe you should give him a chance. For the likes of Patrice Vieira, for the likes of Sol Campbell, they have to go through League One, sometimes the amateur leagues, in order to prove themselves. And when they do get to the top flights, they get there when they're in their 50s or their 60s.
And I think, to touch on that, staying in London, THOLAKELE, you've got Ledley King, was, of course, the assistant to Ryan Mason of Tottenham Hotspur. And one would have thought, well, the logical thing would be to give Ledley King the opportunity because played for Spurs for so many years. And it just seems that black managers are on the back foot all the time.
They always are, because you can be the leader on the field. You can be the one that inspires the fans. You can lead the conversation. But once it's time to actually give them the responsibility and give them the plaudits when they've earned their coaching badges, when they've earned the right to be at the top seat of the different football clubs, they aren't given that opportunity. I think back to Sol Campbell and how he constantly had to fight in League One. This is Sol Campbell who won league titles for Arsenal. In League One, he was having to prove himself. Frank Lampard went from Derby to coaching Chelsea, had no track record, but he had the luxury of being able to do that. So you understand why the likes of Raheem Sterling are always complaining about, now they're aware of the fact that they've got bigger platforms, so they speak out about these issues. Because it's not about the likes of Raheem Sterling, because maybe he'll become a pundit, maybe he'll own his own football club, or he'll bring through players through his foundations. But it's for the players that come behind him that are trying to make it as a Manchester United manager or a Manchester City manager, that know that they still have a lot of work to do. They aren't as lucky. I always look at Chris Hughton and the success that he had with Norwich, that he had with Newcastle. The slightest blip that he had with Newcastle, all of a sudden the club were like, no, we won't do it. They were willing to give Alan Pardew a 6-year contract, but they weren't giving that same grace to Chris Hughton.
THOLAKELE, one final question. How do we change that mentality, especially in Europe? How difficult is it going to be? Because you may have the Black Lives Matter movement, you may have taken the knee, but it has to transcend into action because words really make no difference.
For us, unfortunately, white privilege is something that you wouldn't just wake up one day and say, okay, today we're going to change matters. It's from the boardroom level down, and it's from the stadium level up. We look at the fact that fans will boo the England squad for taking the knee. The players aren't asking for change. They're merely asking for you guys to recognize that we as black athletes are not treated the same. So if supporters are that difficult on players who they watch week in, week out, Marcus Rashford, a man who has fed half of England, let's be honest, still gets booed. He lost that UEFA Cup final, was getting monkey emojis in his DMs. If it's hard for a footballer that has been that successful, can you imagine how much tougher it is for a black manager to come into the system? Yes, I've heard of the English trying to introduce a rule where you're going, okay, of the candidates that you're bringing into the coaching position, you have at least got to make one of them black. Why do we need to do that? If you guys are saying a Frank Lampard only has a UEFA D license, is good enough to coach, why does a Chris Hughton need the top level to prove himself as a coach? Just look at the managers based on their capabilities. It should never have to be about their skin color. But unfortunately, because of the way things are set up in Europe, because they know that fans also have a big sway in how clubs clubs, players, and coaches are treated, it's still going to be a long battle.
THOLAKELE MNGANGA, EWN Sports Anchor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, there we go. It's going to be a long road ahead for black managers to get their recognition. We hope that Patrick Vieira getting into Crystal Palace can be the start of that. There's still a long way to go.